The stillness of the pre-dawn hours of September 17, 1862, was broken by the thundering hooves of Abner Doubleday's command staff as they raced up the hill near the Joseph Poffenberger farm. Doubleday's orders were to begin his attack on the Confederate left at first light, but events were now unfolding that would compel him to accelerate those plans. Unlimmering might be more accurate. John Pelham, under the command of the legendary Jeb Stuart, was lining up his horse artillery on nearby Nicodemus Heights. This put Doubleday's brigades of Phelps and Gibbon directly in range and in terrible danger. Doubleday would have to get the men moving before it was too late. John Gibbon's 4th Brigade was ordered to move without delay, and the men of the 6th Wisconsin were roused from their sleep and ordered to take cover behind the Poffenberger barn and begin their attack. The men of the 6th did not enjoy tents or fires this night. Arriving around 9 p.m. the previous evening in a cold drizzle rain, after having marched more than 50 miles and fighting up South Mountain just a few days prior, the men slept on their arms, prepared to fight at the coming of dawn. They were cold, hungry, and now only half awake, placed into column by company and moved as swiftly as they could be up the rock-strewn hillside in the darkness, stumbling and slipping in their leather-soled boots up the grassy slope. But they weren't quick enough. 2 shots roared from Nicodemus Heights, the first passing over their heads, the second shell exploding in the ranks of Company A, disabling 11 men, killing 2, including the commander of Company A, Captain Noyes. Other regiments may have broken and run for their lives under such conditions, but these men from Wisconsin were no ordinary regiment. They marched on, leaving their dead and wounded behind until they reached their destination in a low swell behind Joseph Poffenberger's barn, and prepared for their assault on the Confederate left flank through the North Woods. Many more of their friends would be casualties before the bloodiest day in American history would be through with the 6th Wisconsin. We're roughly in the position where John Gibbon's brigade, including the 6th Wisconsin, is going to end up before they start their attack. Behind me in the swell in the low ground, that is area protected from the artillery on Nicodemus Heights. This is where the 6th Wisconsin is going to lead Gibbon's brigade in the attack down toward the Hagerstown Turnpike. We're standing just beyond the North Woods. This is about the position where the 6th Wisconsin is going to lead the 4th Brigade of the 1st Division on the early morning attack. Behind me, directly behind me, is the Miller's Cornfield. And right behind my left shoulder, in front of the camera, you might be able to see the tops of the Miller homestead. This is going to be the Miller house, the Miller barn, the famous orchard that they talk about in all of the books and all the reference material. This is where the 6th Wisconsin is going to come out of the woods and right across the field behind me, going at an angle toward the Hagerstown Turnpike. The Confederates are going to have skirmishers in and around this area that the 6th Wisconsin is going to help to push off with their own skirmishers on their way toward the Miller farm. We're standing just north of the Miller farmstead. Behind us, you can see the North Woods. This is where the 6th Wisconsin is going to come out and attack the Confederate position. Colonel in charge of the 6th Wisconsin is going to be Colonel Bragg. He's going to issue orders for skirmishers. So the 1st Company on the right, under Captain Ho. 1st Company on the left, that's going to be under Kellogg. And so they're going to fan out. But unfortunately, Ho has a problem that morning, doesn't he?
Yeah, Ho, he is in charge of Company A. That is the company that initially in the morning got hit with a shell, having 13 casualties. Seeing his probably friends and people he's responsible for mangled and hurt and dead like that, it caused an event. From the stress and trauma of the situation, I always kind of curl up next to a tree, and Bragg will say he grows there, showing his white feather. But as somebody who's never been in combat, I completely understand. Ho could not handle the situation in this moment, and his company is not able to participate in the fight. Meanwhile, Kellogg rushes across this field. There's a garden, a peach orchard, and an apple orchard, and it's full of Confederate skirmishers, and rushes and begins to push them out.
Described as a full sprint, and they actually come across over my left shoulder up there on that hill, and they're going to swing around, and almost, it seems to me, and I don't have anywhere to point to this specifically, but it seems to me, watching so much War of Rights, that the corner of that orchard, it seems like they hit both sides of that fence at the same time.
It would make sense because the skirmishers are going to be spread out at least 5 paces apart. They're going to run. Everybody's going to be at their own pace. They're already under fire, under stress. And it seems like for Captain Kellogg that the most obvious way to deal with this threat is to attack it as quickly as possible. So instead of being side by side like we are right now, everybody's spread out and they're going to the same location, and they do a flanking maneuver on this location. So I would imagine that they're able to envelop the orchard, which pushes the Confederates out and eventually back to the fence line where the cornfield will begin later on for the 6th Wisconsin.
Bragg at this point, Colonel Bragg is going to bring the infantry up, and he's going to split it into 2. He's going to have a right wing and a left wing. He's going to take command of the right wing and merge down onto the Hagerstown Turnpike and use that as a guide. Rufus Dawes is going to take command of the left wing, and he's going to come in this direction. Once they get to this spot, this orchard, they find that they can't tear down the fence. He orders all of his men to grab a hold of it and try to yank it out, and they can't get Miller's fence down, so they have to go around it.
We're standing at the approximate location where the fence to the garden and the orchard is going to be. When the left wing under command and control of Dawes gets up here, he orders his men to break down the fence, to tear it down, and he's not able to. At that point in time, he issues orders that his men will file by the right flank and into a gate somewhere around here, and they will enter in through the garden and push up through the orchard the rest of the Confederate skirmishers that are in the vicinity. When one of his captains orders his company to turn by the right flank, a bullet will go through his mouth, killing his best friend instantly. Dawes just proceeds to do his job and try and catch up with the right wing, which is already advanced beyond this location. Their fence, it turns out, was much easier to knock down.
The tree line that you see behind me is actually part of a ridge that runs all the way down into the West Woods, and it gets deeper as it goes in. In fact, throughout the day, both armies will use this ledge as cover. A lot of historians and a lot of books that you'll read describe this as a stone wall or a rock ledge, and we'll look at that more closely. At this time of the battle, there are Confederate skirmishers over there beyond that ridge, and they're going to cause trouble for the 6th Wisconsin. We're standing on the Hagerstown Turnpike. Behind me is the ravine we talked about earlier, the famous stone ledge. And you're going to have Confederate skirmishers back here at this time. The 6th Wisconsin comes up to this high ground at the top of the hill. They see an artillery piece being moved into position right in front of them. They're going to break off a company, Company F, and he's going to send Bragg, Colonel Bragg, is going to send Company F up to deal with that artillery. In the fields behind me are the 6th Wisconsin. the right wing of the 6th Wisconsin extending out into this field. Now, they have no idea exactly where the Confederate line is. They certainly don't know that there are skirmishers waiting in ambush over behind this rock ledge. But what they do see very clearly as they get to the top of this rise behind me is artillery down the Hagerstown Turnpike. And what is he going to do? Colonel Bragg is going to send one of his companies up to deal with that artillery piece. That's going to be under the command of Captain von Batchel. And he's going to come up here and he's going to try to silence the gun before they can really start hitting the line. But unfortunately for von Batchel, when he gets to this spot, he's riddled with 12 bullets. Turns out he found exactly where the Confederate line started, and it was right behind camera in the West Woods.
Von Batchel, he is a soldier by trade and by life. He is born in Germany. He is trained to be a soldier in Switzerland. He fights for the French, and he fights as a Garibaldi in Italy. He moves to America in 1851. He's very active in the militia. He is considered to be a strong disciplinarian, and he is liked by his men, one of the many good leaders that the Iron Brigade will produce. And this will be his last day. When he gets ordered up here, the lines of Penn and Grisby right behind me stand up and fire a volley into his company. He takes 12 bullets. Alongside of him is a Newfoundland black and white dog. He's given this dog as a gift by the men of his company. He loves this dog. He trains it to do military exercises with him, and the dog can stand in formation and even salute. His beloved dog's with him when he dies and refuses to leave his side.
At about the same time, the whole regiment right wing is going to come under fire from the ambush of the Confederates in behind the rock ledge, and that's going to cause Bragg to pull his men back to the fence line on the Hagerstown Turnpike for cover. Behind me is the famous Miller Cornfield. Behind camera is the Hagerstown Turnpike. Rufus Dawes, in command of the left of the 6th Wisconsin, has his men lying down in this field taking cover, while Bragg, Colonel Bragg, is on the right-hand side of the Hagerstown Turnpike using the fence as cover, firing at Confederates into the West Woods. Bragg is going to get wounded, and he's going to give command to Rufus Dawes. He's going to call Dawes over to this very fence and say, hey, you're in command, I'm going to the rear. And so what does Dawes do? He notices off in the West Woods there's a lot of people on horseback. He thinks it's a general officer, and he must have been a damn good shot, because he reports that he took 6 shots, not from his own gun, but 1 shot, handed a rifle, 2 shots, 3 shots, and by the 6th one, I think they got the picture, and he describes it as scattering. Okay, we're at the southwest corner of the famous Miller Cornfield. This is going to be the position behind me where Rufus Dawes is going to have the left wing of the 6th Wisconsin. When he takes command, Kellogg is in command of the right wing because Bragg has been wounded on that first volley from the West Woods. So Bragg is going to leave the field, and Dawes is now in command. He's waiting for support to come up on his left, Colonel Allen and the 2nd Wisconsin. Colonel Allen finally shows up, one arm in a sling, one arm with a sword. He points the sword at Dawes, he points the sword forward, and Dawes is ordered to move, and they do. They accompany the 2nd Wisconsin right up to this fence, and the 6th Wisconsin is going to take fire from Douglas's men behind camera, and they're described as just popping up out of the ground. And Dawes says very clearly that men weren't just killed, they were knocked out of the ranks by the dozens. If they didn't stay here, right, they're not just going to stay here statically like you see movies and just start throwing blows. No, these men have been up for days. They have got very little sleep, very little food. They are hysterical at this point. And when these guns start going off, the excitement ratchets up. These guys vault the fence, and they are described as running, laughing, and cheering as they are attacking the Confederates at the epicenter. So if you're in the 6th Wisconsin, it's been a pretty long day already. You started at the Joseph Poffenberger farm. You ran across a bunch of open fields. You've been fighting skirmishers all the way to this point, and now you're heavily engaged with the main Confederate line. As the 6th and the 2nd Wisconsin come out into this epicenter, they're going to defeat the brigade of Douglas. Douglas is going to be killed right here in this general area, and the Georgians are going to book it out of the center of this. But the threat's not over. The battle hasn't ended, it's just beginning. And now a new threat is going to emerge from the West Woods, and the 6th Wisconsin, the 2nd Wisconsin are going to be supported by the 2nd U.S. Sharpshooters, along with the 84th New York, also known as the 14th Brooklyn. They're going to come up on the right, and we're going to turn our action from going from north to south now. We're going to change from east to west. We're going to turn our whole regiment and face the West Woods and fight along the Hagerstown Turnpike. As our 6th Wisconsin comes out of the cornfield, they're attacking Douglas's position here at the epicenter. They're going to be facing down behind camera, shooting down the hill at Douglas's men, who are starting to fall back. Now the 6th Wisconsin and the 2nd Wisconsin, after having driven back Douglas's brigade, they see movement across the Hagerstown Turnpike on their right, but they don't know who it is. Look how close that road is to us where we stand right now, roughly in the position of the 6th Wisconsin. There was so much smoke and confusion, many of the men were shouting out, thinking that that was the other half of the Iron Brigade that had been sent to the other side of the Hagerstown Turnpike. They really don't know their mistake until Stark and Jackson's men open up on them from the other side of the pike. And they're going to try to cross over the Hagerstown Turnpike and attack the 6th Wisconsin here, who has the support of the 2nd Wisconsin to their left and the support of the 2nd U.S. Sharpshooters along with the 84th New York on their right. It's a pretty strong line, and it's described by Dawes that not all the men were firing. They were laying down behind hastily made breastworks because the Confederates had fence rails out here to defend themselves as well. And not all the men are firing. They're loading. Some men are just loading the rifles, handing them forward, and the best shooters are the ones taking the shots. And keeping in mind, downstream here, the 2nd U.S. Sharpshooters are carrying Sharps rifles, and they're going to put a lot of lead into the Confederate line. We're close to, if not on, the high water mark for the 6th Wisconsin today at Antietam. They've come all the way from the Joseph Poffenberger farm, and they've made it here. They've defeated several Confederate brigades. And now they're in a position where they're kind of extended way out beyond the Union line. They don't have a lot of threats right to their front, and they're going to continue to move down this field toward the high ground behind me, which is their ultimate objective. But what's going to happen about this time is John Bell Hood and the Texas Brigade, and as well as Law's brigade, are going to come out of the West Woods and line up on the Smoketown Road behind us, and they're going to start marching up in this direction. Now, Dawes and his men didn't have great powder. They had been fighting all morning, all the way across this field. They're short on ammunition, and they see that the threat, the numbers coming after them, are too much for them to handle, and they're going to start a fighting withdrawal back to the cornfield where the main Union line currently rests.
Everything that the 6th Wisconsin's been through. They've defeated Douglas's men and are still kind of fighting with the remnants of that. They've defeated Penn and Grisby. They've defeated Stark and Jackson's men, and with the help of the 2nd U.S. Sharpshooters and the 14th Brooklyn and the 2nd Wisconsin. They now, with their guns fouled up from bad powder, they are torn to pieces. They've been through some of the worst fighting the Civil War will ever see multiple times. Right behind me, Hood's division comes out, fresh, ready to go, angry, and they begin advancing on to the 6th Wisconsin. In a well-placed volley, the troops of Hood's division are able to take out 2 out of every 3 men in the front rank of the 6th Wisconsin. What began as a loading and firing fallback that's organized soon became a sprint for life.
All right, we're back again at the high ground approaching the Confederate line. By this time of the day, the 6th Wisconsin has seen heavy fighting, the heaviest fighting they will see today, and they've fallen back in this general direction. Now, John Gibbon, their brigade commander, is running his artillery right behind us. This is Campbell's battery, and they're going to be in this position when the Texans come through the bottom of the cornfield to my left. And what you're going to have are 3 regiments, the 18th Georgia, the 4th Texas, and Hampton's Legion, all firing at these guns. And you're going to have the whole Iron Brigade back together because Marcina Patrick is going to bring the other 2 regiments, the 7th Wisconsin and the 19th Indiana, out of the woods with him, facing off to my left, attacking those Confederates as well. This is some of the most graphic and horrible descriptions of artillery fire that I've personally been aware of. They're talking about shooting double canister into the ground at the fence, arms, legs, heads, and wood and dirt and stone flying in the air. It's absolutely horrible. But ultimately, this is the last position the 6th Wisconsin will hold on this battlefield, and ultimately they're going to be relieved and fall back to the North Woods.